sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. My name is Virginia Jones. I'm a stand-up comic, but my sister's a therapist.
Hello, I'm Virginia Jones's sister. My name is Laura Ryan, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
On this show, a comedian and a therapist who are sisters talk about family trauma, mental health, things going on in the zeitgeist, what's happening on TikTok, the gamut. And listeners have said it's like hanging out in a room while you're having a conversation, which is basically what it is.
Yes. And if you would like to have a conversation with either or both of us, you might enjoy listening to this podcast.
Like and subscribe. So this week, Laura, I would like to talk about tipping. This is a little on the lighter side.
Fun.
The tipping world. So we're Americans, both of us. We always have been.
Pretty much.
And so we grew up the tradition of tipping in bars, tipping in restaurants, tipping when you get your hair done, service-oriented tipping. And of course, we've both been waitresses.
Yes. Some would call us servers.
Waitrons.
Waitron was the term that got bandied around when I was in college. And I used to call myself a waitron because I thought it sounded like a robot.
It does sound like a robot. And in the future, we will be exclusively waited on by robots. And it's getting closer all the time. So we grew up used to a certain amount of tipping. We have both worked tip-based jobs. In Texas, based on a law passed in 1966, you could pay a tip-oriented person half of minimum wage with the expectation that they would make minimum wage with their tips. When we were in college, we were making $2.13 an hour.
You're acting like that's something that's in the past. That is a current social practice today.
And I think it's disgusting because when I moved to Portland, I had already had a job in the professional world, in the apparel world when I moved to Portland. But when I moved to Portland and I found out that waitresses were making $7 an hour plus tips, I thought, holy cow, they're rich.
Right. I remember a good friend of mine, who's still a good friend, moved to Portland in the summertime to make up the difference. Right. Yeah. She would wait tables and basically be rich and come back during the school year and just kind of throw money at people.
Just making it rain. Dollar
bills on every corner.
So where do you think tipping came from?
I think tipping came as a response to no longer having free labor in the United States. I know the original thing was rich Europeans would give their servants tips, but I think where it took off here is because we stopped calling it slavery.
So yes, you are correct. So tipping originated in Europe in the 1700s when you would have a serf or a servant and they did an extra good job, you would give them a little extra money on top. And then in pubs in the 1700s, the word tips apparently may have originated from to ensure promptitude, which I like the word promptitude.
I do too. We don't use that. We don't use that word nearly enough.
We don't. You can say to your child, I need you to get in the car with promptitude.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you're right. It was a European tradition.
Yeah.
They didn't do it everywhere. They didn't do it all the time.
It was only rich people who had servants in Europe.
So in the 1850s and 1860s, when Americans went to Europe and they saw a little bit of money being handed out, they brought that back home. And they're like, this makes me feel aristocratic. This makes me feel European.
It was kind of frowned upon, right? Like people thought it was really tacky.
Some people thought it was tacky. Businesses would sometimes think, oh, you're tipping in order to get like more food or like extra, this is a bit of a bribe, right?
Well, it kind of is.
It kind of is. So as you say, it really took root in the 1900s in Reconstruction because people were using freed slaves for service positions and they would underpay them and then encourage tipping. This was especially prominent in the Pullman car industry. So like almost every employee on these sleeper cars that went across the country was a former slave. And they were like, and then our rich customers will just take care of your wage.
Right. Because we wanted it to just be free like it was before. And we're going to rely on the customer to make your wage.
And also, when you have an employee, in quotes, who depends on the customer for their living, that makes for a certain level of service. Like when the first time we started going to England, Laura lived in England for a while. And I went to go visit her. And I had heard, like intellectually, I had heard about they don't tip there. And I thought, well, but they'll love to have a little extra money. Like they'll be delighted.
Right.
But they weren't delighted. And most people kind of don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And I remember we went out to a club. I tried to tip the bartender and he was like, oh, you've left £1 on the counter. And I'm like, no, that's for you. And he looked at me incredulous because this is also a place where they do pre-measured pours.
Right.
So he couldn't make my drink any stronger, even if he had wanted to.
Right. What is this for?
What is this for? You're just leaving money. And the step right to it. Yes, ma'am, I'll be right back with your iced tea. That level of service doesn't exist either.
No.
Because you're not getting tips.
It's very, and like, that's what I noticed when I lived in the UK, is it's very demotivating when there are no tips. And your service, I've noticed this in the whole of Europe, is very poor.
Right. And like, but I've come around to the other side of it because at first I was like, well, they're going to love a tip. They're going to enjoy a little extra money. Like all over Europe, like it's much more like rounding up. You know, if your bill is like $8.85, you'll just round up to $9 and everybody's happy with it. But it's very rarely more than 10%. But the idea of like giving someone another 25% on top of their bill, that's an American idea. And yeah, it means that you, on the one hand, you don't pay a little extra for your bill. But on the other hand, service is poor.
Yes. Your server is literally just doing their job, which is really all we really should be doing if we're being honest with ourselves.
Right. I remember an experience because I worked for a couple years in a Chinese restaurant, and I remember
the Pearl Cafe.
Seeing the Pearl Cafe. Laura worked at the sister restaurant, the Jasmine Cafe. So it was like we were in different cities, but connected through high MSG Chinese food. And at one point, my boss was like, he was always like trying to figure out like the other things to do to the business. And he was kind of nuts, but he was like, what if I paid you like a regular, like 40-hour-a-week wage, and then you were available whenever to come into the restaurant? Like I could always call you. And I was like, well, I was like, that sounds like a lot of money. And then he showed me his paperwork. I'm like, oh no, you're wanting to pay me $2.13 an hour. 40 hours. I'm like, no, thank you.
If you want to pay me the surgeon rate of full-time work, yeah, I might think about it.
You know, even I would have done it for Jack in the Box minimum wage. Did you know this? I found out this in my research. So the law that allows people to pay $2.13 an hour, if an employee does not make minimum wage when accounting for tips, did you know the employer is supposed to make up the difference?
No, I did not. No employer has ever mentioned that to me, and I've had many shifts where I did not make minimum wage.
Yeah, so that's illegal. The good thing about tipping is you can maybe get a little extra service. But yeah, I would run into people who I knew from my waitress job. Like I ran into this mom and her kid at like a drugstore. They stopped and had a chat, and like I had a brief chat with them, but I wasn't overly friendly.
Right.
And I remember her being a little bit like seeming a little put off. And I'm like, well, I'm not being paid to be nice to you right now.
Right.
Like, we're not going to have a conversation and you give me $1. If I thought that would happen, I would probably be nice.
I would be a lot more motivated if I knew $1 was waiting on the other side of this conversation.
Right. There's two different me's. There's me who is wearing an apron with pockets.
Right.
And then there's me who is not wearing an apron with pockets.
Right. I'm not representing anything. I'm just walking through a store. So if you think about it, what are the similarities between sex workers and tipped workers? They're in both cases pretending that they like somebody for money.
And that, it's a trope of like men, like older men dating a waitress or hooking up with a waitress, or like comedians on the road hooking up with a waitress. And I think it's two things. I think one, when you bring food to men, they start to think that you're married.
Right.
And two, when you are paid to be nice to men, they think, oh, well, this is what I've been looking for.
Right. And so I remember a client in the past was at a club where women take their clothes off for money. And he realized that he had this moment of clarity where this woman was having a great time with him and his friends, right? And then sort of demanding to be paid for her time. And he was like, I thought we were just having fun. And I said, do you really think that this woman who has come to her job in a thong bikini and sitting and drinking with you, she's just here for fun?
Right. This is a woman who has maintained her birth weight, right? glued rhinestones all over her face, may have had plastic surgery. Like this is her job.
She had implants. She had a chin job. I'm sure she's done all the things. She has invested. She's gotten her nails done, and she's spent probably 2 hours fixing her hair for her shift. This is her job.
I think it's one of those things where everybody kind of knows the truth, but they don't want to know it.
What I'm learning is that a lot of people don't know the truth.
Right. So in LA, it is very, very close. Like bartenders in LA, one, every bartender, every wait staff is super attractive. Like you basically, if you're not an actor or a model, you're not going to get the job.
Right.
And two, bartenders in LA, especially towards the end of the month when rent is due, they wear almost nothing.
Right.
Like it is
2 Band-Aids and a thong.
It is, because that's how they make their money. So here we come to a disadvantage of tipping culturally is that, and I've noticed this in myself, tipping is very rarely tied to actual service.
Right.
Like I noticed this when I was working for tips and when I've been the tipper, I tend to tip 20 to 25% across the board, no matter what.
If you do your job, like I don't tip.
If you do your job.
I will not give you 20% if you don't do your job. That's my rule.
I probably will because I'll
give you 15.
But like generally speaking, performance doesn't have very much to do with the amount of tip at all. It's attractiveness. So like there's a built-in discrimination, right?
Well,
and it goes both ways.
It does. And it also brings back, these industries where tipping is common. What gender are there a lot of in said thing? And you're also reminding me, speaking of bad tippers and how this all ties in. I remember our father, who was a textbook narcissist, he had a bad experience. And so his response, he had some screws in his pocket for some reason. So he left the Waitron a penny and a screw.
Wow. Well, guys, don't worry. He's dead now, so that will not continue.
If you worked at Hooters in the mid-80s, I'm sorry.
So yeah, on the one side, tipping is kind of discriminatory because workers receive different levels of gratuity based on age, sex, race, hair color, even breast size.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a saying, especially in drag shows, the bigger the lips, the bigger the tips. Like, that being more attractive is going to get you more money. And even on the other side, people get worse service if you're a woman, if you're an older person, if you are a person of color, because there's a reputation for being bad tippers. So like unfair stereotypes about groups. So, but white men will get the very best service because that's who really we roll out, the carpet for, because they're going to tip. On some level, they're trying to pay the lady to like have sex with them, to like them. But in general, I found out like 98% of Americans tip in restaurants. Even split tips, so free money, crummy fast food places like Jersey Mike's and Smashburger find that a communal tip jar that you put money in at the register and you split it amongst all the staff, it can raise hourly income by $4 to $6 an hour.
Wow.
Like that's real money.
That is real money.
That takes you from minimum wage to almost being able to have your own apartment.
Right.
So this is kind of funny. I talked about how in Europe, like tipping is a smaller amount. Many European countries refer to tips as drinking money.
Oh.
So in France, a little bit of extra is called pourboire, which is for beer.
Okay.
In Germany, it's Trinkgeld, which means drinking money.
Okay. Literally.
And in Hungarian, borovaló means money for wine.
Good to know.
So just a little bit but that's not a life-changing amount of money. Like that's not like tipping in the US.
No, because I remember I dated a few British people and I remember one of them came home with me and was horrified that I was suggesting that he give $2 after receiving a pitcher of beer, which is like...
Someone brought you a pitcher of beer and you asked him to pay $2 and he was like, no,
he was. And, he turned on his heel and he walked away stridently. And I put the $2 down because I thought, I don't want someone to spit in my beer because this is not our last pitcher. This is our first pitcher.
Right. And so, downsides of tipping in America is like, it can create awkwardness, right? Especially I feel awkward when I'm being asked to tip somewhere where there's not been a service or like
what's the connection here? I had my teeth cleaned.
Right. This is happening right now and it's called tipflation. So I made a list of places that I have seen tip jars because like no one can keep an employee really to putting out a tip jar and like the tip screen that they flip it around to you and say, and now it's going to ask you a question. Did you like the way your groceries got bagged? Right. And so I had a self-checkout kiosk at the airport. So it was late at night. Nothing was open. I served myself a water and the screen said, would you like to add a gratuity? Who am I being gratuitous to?
It's the AI who
this robot
appeared on the screen. The robot is going to need drinking money. So speaking of awkwardness, I'm going to refer back to awkwardness as on the part of the server. So I was working a lunch shift, which, as you know, is not very good. I had this table and they were taking up so much of my time because it was like probably 15 people. Yeah. And at the end of their time, like when they were paying out, they left me $1 for the table. And I walked over and I said, hi, was everything okay? They looked at me like very confused and they said, oh, honey, you're doing a great job. You did everything we wanted. And I was like, okay, so you're satisfied with the level of service you've received.
Wow. Yeah. And they were in that 2%.
And my manager did not offer to make up the difference.
I mean, everyone who works in the service industry has at least a couple stories like this. Sometimes it's a famous person, but they are the exception that proves the rule. But yes, you're spending all this time, you're getting them ramekins of ranch dressing, like you're doing everything. Yes. And then you're very surprised when at the end you receive nothing. One time I had 3 girlfriends in town from Portland. Now, Portland tips, but Portland does not charge sales tax on anything.
Right.
And so, and technically you are supposed to tip on pre-tax, like, because why am I tipping you on what the government charges? But the way it works out is I wind up tipping 20-25% on the whole bill. Like I don't tip pre-tax.
Right.
But each of my girlfriends knew exactly what her thing cost. And then they tipped based on that. And the waitress followed us out. And she was like, is there something wrong? And I was like, oh, I put down $5, right? Like you guys, what did you put down? They're like, oh, I put down $1.25. And I'm like, well, I can never go here again.
Thanks for ruining my day. This is why people don't like women tipping, because women do often tip less. That stereotype is unfortunately true.
Well, but it's like, 1, we don't generally speaking think we're going to have sex with the servers. 2, we don't make as much money.
Right.
You know, a lot of us are a lot closer to the wait staff's level.
And 3, I think a lot of times women are used to men paying.
So not showing off when I was working in Postmates, unfortunately, I did see that stereotype reflected. Like if the best tipper was if you were dropping off food to a couple, like someone who was on a date or a couple at home.
Okay.
If a man was receiving food and he was going to bring it into someone and then they were going to have sex later, like he didn't have to leave the house.
Okay.
Pre-coital food is the best tipped food.
Okay.
They would give you money like they were trying to go rid of it, like it was going to go bad. But many a time I would bring a single, especially a college-age single woman, bless you, college-age single women. I would go running around a dormitory to drop off a yogurt, a froyo, and I would really just get a hearty nothing for my pains. That's
fat zero.
But like all of these jobs, there's an element of gambling. Are you going to get a pre-coital man or are you going to get a girl studying for exams? You don't know.
Tough to know.
And you know that one is going to be better than the other. I did not let that affect my level of service. There was a woman when I was at Pearl Cafe.
Yes.
Denton, Texas, it's the 90s. There was a woman who would come in and she would come in for lunch pretty regularly. And she would always get a big noodle soup and she would always tip nothing at all. And I got used to it. I was like, well, this is just how she is. That's fine. I'm not going to go out of my way for her. I'll bring her everything she needs. She doesn't tip. And I let go of the expectation.
Right.
And then one day we had a man who waited on her and she gave him a tip. And I was so angry.
Because she's being wildly sexist.
Because she was being wildly sexist. Because he's valuable in a way that I am not valuable. Like, it was wild, like, just how my feelings changed. Because if you never tip, okay, you never tip. You're Mr.
Well, you're
Pink.
Just that person. And it's not personal.
It's not personal. Yes, the fact that she tipped a man made it feel personal. Look, you're Mr. Pink from Reservoir Dogs, okay? Fine. But yeah, that really hurt my feelings.
I think that cost Mr. Pink his life, did it not? The not tipping? For the listeners who have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a very funny conversation. And he just explains to a table of gangsters, he survives. He got shot. He was wounded.
Right.
He did survive, but he is left to take the blame for the robbery.
Because he was a bad tipper. just word to the wise. If you are involved in international underground crimes, please be a good tipper.
Well, and it's also funny, like if you're a criminal and so you're living very much this gambler lifestyle, you've got a lot on the line. You might get a lot of money. You might get nothing. It's that gambling thing. Right. Waitresses have, you think that we're a little more related than that. You would have a little more empathy for waitresses.
You would think that, yes.
Okay. So a couple more tipflations because some of these were just insane. There's a tip jar at my oil change place.
Great.
I mean, I guess it's a service. I guess.
Like, are you going to give me? Are you going to give me a salary to tip that? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Are you going to do a crappier job because I didn't tip you? Are you going to mess up my car? Is this like a threat tip? What is this?
Right. What is this? What do you mean? The weirdest one was I went to the dermatologist and I paid on an iPad and I just stared at it because it said, "Do you want to leave a gratuity?" I'm like, "You are a doctor."
Right. You have a medical degree and I'm paying you. And in my business, because I have a Square app, they said, "Do you want to include tipping?" Can you imagine tipping your therapist? What? Today you really did your job.
Today you really dug into why I hate my mother and I really appreciated it.
I'm going to throw you $5.
So, okay. But then on the other hand, rideshare, which is very much a service industry and very underpaid, only 6% of rideshare drives are tipped.
Is that real?
Yes, that's real.
Wow.
And that reflects my experience. It was very funny. A friend of mine said, "Oh, I tipped the guy who drove me to the airport. It was $60 and I gave him another 20." I'm like, "Well, he thinks you want to have sex with him because nobody tips that."
I mean, I tip 20%. But here's the thing that irks me about rideshare. This is just my rideshare. The whole point of rideshare initially was you don't have to tip. Everything's included and you're getting a discounted rate. So this is why we're not using cabs. But now it's just as much as a cab and I have to tip. So how is it different? It's not different.
Right. Now it's just a cab you get on your phone. Although this is interesting. So in Turkey, in Istanbul, I don't speak Turkish. I don't know if you know that about me.
I did know that.
It's a fault of mine. But Turkey was the first country I've been in for a little while where most people didn't speak English. And why would they? They're not Americans. But I've been very spoiled by travel in England.
Right. Traveling in most, destinations, touristy cities are going to have a lot of people who speak English.
So I was a little worried getting around because I don't speak Turkish. But somebody said, "Oh, there's Uber here." And I said, "Oh, cool. Perfect." Because I can just do it on my phone. And they said, "But it is different because Uber is just getting you a taxi." And so what the experience is you say, but it's like I can click in, you can track back to my hotel.
Yeah.
I can track it. I can write in what it is. I don't have to speak Turkish. And because sometimes in Asia, if you want to go anywhere, you have to have the front desk, the concierge write it down for you. And then you hand it to the cabbie. Very awkward. So in Turkey, I was like, "Oh, cool. I can get places." But what happens is you agree to a rate. Mm-hmm. The cab comes and then a Turkish man screams at you that you need to give him $20 American. And I was really confused. I'm like, "Aren't you getting paid?" And then he was like, "I need $20. I just need $20. And I'm like, "But we're paying on the app." And then, they happened a couple times. And every time I contacted Uber and they're like, "That's not supposed to happen." I'm like, "But this is Turkey. So it's happening it can't just be me. It can't just be me."
It was just you.
So some advantages of tipping are you can do a service job and live, or used to be able to.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true anymore.
Right. And that's why tipflation is happening, that everybody's getting squeezed harder. And they're like, "Well, maybe people will tip at a gas station. Maybe someone will tip me at TJ Maxx changing rooms."
Yeah. And my God, can you imagine that? How much would you like to pay the lady who brought your clothes and hung them on a hanger?
She brought your clothes and hung them up.
And then she counted them.
And then she counted them to make sure you hadn't put anything in your underpants when you left.
I think you should definitely give her $5. Hey, that reminds me of a very famous film called Trading Places, where these two very stingy men, very wealthy, they offer their server $5 at their local club. And this man serves them every single day. $5. Maybe I'll go to the movies. That's when you could go to the movies by yourself for $5.
Yeah. But I think that frequently happens. They had been rich for $5 used to be a lot of money when they were kids. And then they're just don't realize that it's not. What does tipping say about us as Americans? Like, what is it psychologically? Like, what do you associate with it? What do you think it says about us that we like doing it and like receiving it?
Well, I really do think it goes back to white supremacy, because everything does. I think it goes back to people wanting to have people that are like underlings. Again, I don't think any of these are conscious thoughts, but I think that ultimately it's like, I want to be served. I want to be above others. And I want to show people that I am entitled to their time and their energy and all of those things.
I think it is a class thing. And ideally, people who are in tip-worthy industries are younger, people who are trying to get a leg up. Like, it's no fun for anybody when you have a 75-year-old waiter, but yeah, people like to feel a little bit superior.
And it's always, if you actually crunch the numbers of who are the servers, they are Black and brown women. And like you said, young white women who haven't yet been able to excel in their careers. Those are the people. So those are people I want to be, kind of putting my thumb on and like, you better do what I say or I won't give you any money.
So Europeans get out of it because they pay everybody a living wage.
Right.
Every time Americans ask companies to pay their servers a living wage, they say, well, we can't possibly run our business that way. And it's like, how can it be so different?
Well, and I think what they're saying is, I don't have a profitable business. Everything goes back to TikTok. But there was a young woman living in Minnesota, an efficiency apartment, and she basically worked out that for her to be alive and have enough money to live, she would have to be paid $35 an hour. And we're fighting to get 15.
Yeah.
And this chick was living in an efficiency apartment in Minnesota. Yeah. That's nowhere near what it's not what the rest of us are having to pay.
She's not a welfare queen.
Well, that was made up by Ronald Reagan because racism.
Because there really weren't those. When things start tightening up, I do notice culturally, Republicans will start finding minorities to blame it on.
Okay.
Like the welfare queen, these trans women who only exist to molest girls in restrooms. Like they'll just make up things.
Well, it's othering, right? We have to other.
It's othering.
We have to look at the other group.
Distracting. It's distracting us from the real issue, which is that the gap between rich and poor has not been this significant since the Gilded Age.
Right.
And you're either living with the boot of capitalism on your neck or you're wearing the boot. There's no in between. So, yeah, I agree with you. Like there's many businesses that have kind of organically grown up around the idea that the customers pay for most of the labor.
Right.
And so that they cannot survive without it because they haven't allowed for it. But like, yeah, restaurants.
But I mean, a lot of plantations went under when they started having to pay staff. That is just a natural consequence of changing your economy.
Yeah. So the class structure in America makes us like to tip, but it's not like there's not a class struggle in England.
Right.
You know, what makes us so different? I guess it is the plantation mentality.
Right.
And the longstanding tradition. I also, Chick-fil-A, which is a famously fascist organization. Homophobic. And it was very funny when everybody was like, oh, we're not going to eat at Chick-fil-A anymore because they hate gay people. And so I entered into a boycott that meant almost nothing because I've been vegetarian for 37 years. Like I'd never eaten a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
There's only one thing at Chick-fil-A that I can actually eat. So it's not much of the coleslaw, I think. That doesn't
waffle
have
fries?
I think the waffle fries have some kind of lard in them. So
wow. But like, it's also funny to me, like, again, I was in Chick-fil-A doing food delivery and the whole thing, the whole experience is a white man's wet dream, right? You've got these simple, it's a very Mormon vibe.
Right.
It's very 50s. Welcome to Chick-fil-A. What can I get you? Like it's children pretending to be excited that you exist. And it's like being in a little Stepford Wives situation. So I understand why conservatives like it apart from hating gay people.
Well, apparently the hate chicken is very good as well.
But same with Cracker Barrel, also legendarily not a gay-friendly place. Yeah, let's pretend that we're on a plantation. Wouldn't that be fun?
Well,
Would you like some biscuits?
So I think what you're stepping into here is just cultural norms, right? Because you're like, well, why do Americans like to do this? I don't know if we like to do this. This is just what we've always done, and if you talk about always, for most American humans, the always started in the maybe 50s, right? So what we've done since probably the 1950s is what we're doing now.
And another interesting tipping trivia fact. So tipping really took root, we said, during Reconstruction in the 1900s. 48 states passed laws to abolish tipping between 1900 and 1926.
Yeah.
But then prohibition meant that like you had a whole class of people who couldn't work, bartenders, tavern owners. And so all this money was sucked out of the economy. And so every business, like something, if you'd been a bar and restaurant, you were just a restaurant. And every business was trying to scramble and get more money for its workers.
Yeah.
So that's when like everyone just gave up. They're like, well, we have to have tipping because tipping is like stone soup, right? Everybody puts in a little to pay one person's wage.
Has everyone read that children's book that she's referring to?
I think people know stone soup. Put a stone in the pot. A neighbor puts carrots in the pot. A neighbor puts a rabbit in the pot. Nobody has all the ingredients, but they all give a little. And then they have a delicious soup. In this case, the soup is one person's living wage, which they couldn't do on $2.13 an hour.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on tipping? What does it say about us? And how do we keep from being asked to tip every single person we see every day?
I think that the solution to this is we have to do a lot of structural governmental policy changes. I mean, I think personally, if I work at the Piggly Wiggly or if I work at the, a fancy cafe or a strip club, I should be able to pay all of my bills at the end of the month without government assistance.
Right. And why is it that we talked about this recently, that when the fancier the restaurant is, the more you're asked to dress like a man? Like that when you're going into like a nice evening restaurant, all the women are wearing like a button-down black shirt and pants and an apron. Why? Because men are the only good servers? Is that what it is?
It's because that's how I learned how to tie a tie. Actually, I had this here's a pro tip for anyone who's waiting tables. I had my boyfriend tie the tie, and then I would just kind of loosen it and hang it on a hanger and then wipe it off occasionally and never wash it.
My father did teach me to tie a tie because I was very into Annie Lennox. But it was funny because the tie he taught me, because he's from the 70s.
Right. The Windsor knot.
Was the full Windsor, Windsor, which is like the thickness, like it's a potato size tie knot. And what I wanted was a half Windsor.
A cool 80s Windsor.
Yes.
And you unfortunately did not have YouTube.
I didn't have YouTube. Guys, we didn't used to have YouTube. You just had to learn stuff from your dad.
Right. Okay. So Virginia.
In closing. Yeah. So my question is, why, if I'm serving you a steak and dressing like a man, does that mean that my labor is worth more than if I serve you a waffle and wear an orange apron? Like, I'm a person who I have made a good amount of money at times in my life, and I've made no money at times in my life.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing is that people treat me very differently.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any greater inner worth when I am a Nike executive than when I am driving Lyft. But it's interesting how people seem to think I do.
Right. Yeah. The caste system that we have kind of built into our culture.
So tipping, on the one hand, you're spreading it out among a lot of people to pay your workers. But on the other hand, we are reinforcing classism, racism, sexism, homophobia. Homophobia-ism. We've invented a new word, and we're going to start using the word promptitude.
Every second of every day.
So yeah, I think to really like distill it, you can write me and fight me about it if you want. I think what Americans like about tipping is that we like maintaining the class structure. We don't have the same classes as England, right? You're not born into a certain class necessarily.
Right.
But when I'm tipping you and you're working for my tips, I know who I am and I know who you are.
And I like that.
My last great tipping story. Speaking of older men trying to date young women in the Waitron universe.
Yep.
One time I had a guy come in and, had a lunch. He was a college student. He wasn't like an adult or anything, but he left a note under his bill with some cash that said, I can't tip you, but I would like to take you to dinner. And I was like, what on earth, sir?
Sir, if you could take me to dinner, that means you can tip me.
And I thought it was hilarious and extremely dumb. And I told some of my, fellow Waitrons about it. And a lot of them said, oh yeah, I've had that guy. I'm like, what the heck? Here's my phone number. Please enjoy that.
Oh my God. Wow.
Because you know what? He was a high value man.
Which is exactly what this podcast is all about. Trad wives and high value men.
That's right. Now, if people have things to say to us, they can write us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you would like to hire one or both of us to do public speaking at your event, you can write us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com.
Yes, if you have a women's retreat, let us know. We'll be there.
We'll go. Laura, where can people find you online?
They can find me on my website, lauraryan.org, or they can find me on TikTok. I am Laura Ryan. Virginia, where can people find you?
Thank you so much for asking. You can find me at my website, Badinia, BADINIA.com. My TikTok is also Badinia. My Instagram is also Badinia. It's just Badinia all day long.
Bad idea.
Thank you so much for listening. If you are enjoying our podcast, please subscribe and rate. Give us 5 stars.
Tell everyone you know.
Tell everyone you know. If you think that we're not doing a 5-star job, just keep it to yourself. Tell no one. But if you like us, tell everyone. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.